So here is what's important to remember is this one is dollars, the total cost, and the average and the marginal cost are per unit. Right? So there's different axes on the marginal and average cost curves than on the total cost curves. Here's a unit of output. So let's have this thing that's going up. It's got an inflection point, starts going up some more, and then it goes up. So here's our total cost curve. For each unit of output, we have some cost that our whole factory is costing us. We had 2 points from before. We had this inflection point where it's going up, and then it changes the way the slope is. Right? And then we have this other point here that we looked at as if we drew this ray from the origin, what's the lowest point we got to? So let's take these 2 points, and we're going to do marginal and average off of them. So this point with the ray from the origin was going to get us to the average because it has costs. If the rise over the run of this line is cost per unit Q over Q. Right? So the ray from the origin is going to just have a way that we can calculate averages. So this point here is the lowest. All of these points, if we drew the ray, would be higher. So this point here would be the lowest point of our average cost curve. And then this point here is the inflection point where the slope's changing. Right? So this would be the lowest point of our marginal cost curve. We're adding additional workers. They're getting us more output. Then they start getting us less and less more output. So the marginal cost, importantly, we'll get back to this one if we're going to graph this though. The marginal cost is going to go through the bottom of this average cost curve. So when we draw this curve for average cost, the point where marginal cost crosses it is going to be right at its bottom. Most of the time, we're going to operate in this space down the bottom here, the per unit cost curves. The marginal cost curve is going to be really important. We'll basically get bored of the upper half of the picture. Watch my timing. So here's the 3 of them graphed together. Total cost implies average cost and marginal cost. And now we can also think about fixed and variable cost. So a lot of times in the Econ 1 example that's classical of capital and labor, the variable cost is the labor and the fixed cost is the capital. I own a factory. It's full of, it's the Industrial Revolution. It's full of spinning looms. And how many dispossessed peasants do I need to fill up my factory to work the looms? You could have this is the land that I have, and I'm adding pounds of nitrogen to grow corn. So the variable cost are things that could be adjusted or changed in the short run. We're going to decide how much of units of input to put in a variable cost. And the average variable cost would be the variable cost divided by units of output. The fixed cost, on the other hand, we would say in the short run decision of the firm, they're sunk. They're decided they cannot be adjusted. So we're going to say because they can't be adjusted, the firm's basically not going to take them into account. It's a decision that's already been made. Another way to think about fixed cost is it's the cost of producing nothing. You open the door of your factory, there it is. There's just the cost of having the factory there. It's the cost of your restaurant. You had a whole bunch of physical things in your restaurant. You rented the space. You have all the stuff in the restaurant. It's the cost of just having the firm, the production. Another thing that we talk about is it's the overhead. We have a big set of lumpy costs that we're going to call overhead. Then we're going to figure out, how many employees to hire for the restaurant, how many employees to, in variable costs, we have a whole bunch of different things we could think about. But the fixed costs are the costs that are just sort of, we're stuck with. So in our average cost curve, well, just to think about, in our fixed costs are going to be flat in a cost curve. And variable costs are going to be increasing. So if we just do this really quickly, just in total costs, before we go into the averages. So we had this curve, that was like our total cost curve. Our fixed costs are flat. They are not changing no matter how many employees we hire. We just have fixed costs moving along and variable costs increasing. The more people we hire, the more variable costs we have. But we want to look at the marginal and average. So we need to average out the cost per units of output that we have. So the fixed cost is easy to do. It starts out super high, and then it's just sort of going to go down hyperbolic, asymptotic. Fixed costs are just going to decrease. So if we produce a lot, and we divide the total number of output, total units of output by the cost of our factory, it's just going to get less and less. It's going to disappear towards 0. Variable costs are going to go down, and they're going to have some minimum, and then they're going to go up. So this is average fixed cost. It's just going to disappear down as the units of output go up. Because of our decreasing marginal product, diminishing returns, the average variable costs are going to go up over time. And our total costs are going to be adding these 2 points together. So the total cost curve on this end is as fixed costs go less and less, the total cost curve is converging towards variable cost. Here it's quite a bit higher. So we're going to have some total cost curve that's adding this component, average fixed cost, plus this average variable cost to make our average total cost. I'll move this one down so it's a little more clear. The average fixed cost up here, it's converging towards the variable cost because the share of fixed cost is constantly going down as we get bigger and bigger. There's the average fixed cost. It's always easy to draw this. It's always just going to be like hyperbolically decreasing. We're dividing the cost of the factory over the units that we produce. Now, when we want to graph this, we want to think again about this issue that I showed you. The marginal cost is going to cross through the bottom of average cost. And one way we can think about this without doing math is to say if the marginal cost is less than average cost, then the average cost is decreasing. That's not okay. If the marginal cost is greater than the average cost, the cost to produce one more unit is greater than the average cost of that unit, then average cost is going to be increasing. As we add and produce more, the costs are going to be going up. If the marginal cost equals average cost, then average cost is going to be at a flat point. One more unit of output is going to cost the same that all the units this far cost us. Average cost is going to be unaffected by that extra unit. So when we want to graph this, we think, as I said before, the marginal cost is going to go through the bottom of average cost. So if we have a marginal cost curve That's increasing. There's diminishing marginal returns. Each additional unit that we put in is only going to get us so much more. And fixed costs are not a part of marginal cost. Fixed costs have already been netted out, so fixed costs aren't part of it. So we'll have points where the average variable cost will hit the bottom of that. And then when we add in and make an average total cost, we'll hit the bottom of that too. So this is a really important picture to sort of be able to draw. A bunch of other things are going to come off of that picture. I'm going to redraw this picture a few times. This is sort of the nugget of like, we're looking into the economics of the firm. We're looking at what the cost structure of the firm is. If we want to regulate pollution, we want to get this information. If we want to regulate the price that the electricity company is going to charge our customers, we want to know these numbers. If we're protecting the environment, if we're protecting consumers, we're going to litigate and try and find these numbers out. Companies are going to hide them, so companies are competing with each other, and they want to be sort of dodgy about what their average costs are. They're going to release some of these numbers because they want their publicly traded companies, and they're going to want to say, look at all this profit that we're making. But within companies, it's sort of like a secret what their cost structure is. How are they doing it? Where are they cutting costs? That's like a comparative advantage to that company. So this information about marginal cost of producing an extra unit and average cost of producing the units is sort of driving a whole bunch of things within the firm. This is all looking at the cost structure we're thinking about it right now within an individual company. And we're going to look at profit. We'll phrase this a couple different ways, but we're going to have two components here. We're going to have revenue and costs. We're going to say that profit equals revenue minus costs. Revenue is going to be the price that we're going to get for each unit of output that we're getting times the quantity of output that we sell. So we're going to go to the market, we're going to sell so many units at the market price. And then at any unit of output, our internal cost structure is going to tell us how much the cost was to produce that much. So we're going to start with the perfect competition market clearing case, and we're going to say this price P is something that the firms take from the market. There's multiple firms competing. They're going to take the price that the market's setting. And we'll relax that assumption later for sure. And the firm's problem is to figure out how many units to produce, figure out what Q is, and what's the right level of inputs to produce Q. So we're going to say, from this function, we're going to say that firms are going to maximize profit by setting the marginal cost equal to the output price. So if we were in the calculus world and we had a function for profit, we would take the derivative, and that would give us the marginal cost equal to the price, taking the derivative of this profit function. This is like a non-calculus econ 1, so we'll walk through this a little bit. So marginal cost, one way to talk through it, is the cost to produce one more unit given that Q units are already been produced. So in a discrete choice case, say that calculus is continuous, the marginal cost is the cost to produce one more unit given that we're already producing Q units. So the cost, another way to say is the cost to produce the next unit is the cost to produce all the units that we produced so far plus the marginal cost. So the cost to produce the next unit is the cost so far plus the marginal cost. We could think of it as a residual in that way. So we could think about it as making one less unit. Here's our profit function. So the profit to produce one less unit than we're already at is the profit to produce one less unit minus the cost to produce at the Q star, this equilibrium setting. So this is that formula for profit that I already had. Profit times one less unit minus the cost times one less unit minus this part here, which is our standard profit formulation. So if we redo the terms, we'll get this. So if we did one less unit, we would give up one unit of price because we're selling one less unit, and the marginal cost of doing one less unit. So we would lose this much profit if we produce one less unit than our equilibrium set. Do the whole same thing for producing one more unit, producing an additional unit. So we'll get the price and the marginal cost. If we make one more unit, we will get this much income, and it will cost us this much. This will be the increase in profit from producing one more unit. So profit maximization says we're going to get to the point where we're at the top of a profit curve. So we can't get more if we produce more, and we can't get more if we produce less. There's going to be some point of all of the possible profits that this enterprise could come up with is going to be the most. So you can't increase your profits by producing more, and you can't increase your profits by producing less. So these two inequalities are going to say that price minus marginal cost is going to equal 0, so price will equal marginal cost. Right? We can't increase output and get more profits, and we can't decrease output and lower our costs and get more profits. So right at the point that we're maximizing profits, the output price is equaling to the marginal cost of producing that unit. So this is a discrete simulation of calculus. So one thing we'll think about it graphically. This is our dollars per unit that we graph everything in, and this is our units of output. Here's our marginal cost curve. If we're at this equilibrium point where we've decided that price equals marginal cost, if we go to this side of it, our marginal cost will be going up more than we're getting income from selling the additional units. If we produce less than this equilibrium, price is still higher than marginal cost, and the more units we sell, we can still be making money by selling additional units. So if we're producing down here, we're leaving money on the table. There's a whole bunch that extra units would get us an increased profits. So this point here is the point that's the highest amount of profit that this venture could make. So profit, back to profit, revenue minus cost. So this is getting a little circular, but we want to pick how much to produce at this profit maximizing point, picking Q star at the point where marginal cost equal to price. So we'll look at how much that our factory could produce, and we're going to say the profit maximizing point is to sell a certain number of units where our marginal cost of producing that last unit equals the price that's going to come in the door for that unit. So that's where we're going to set how much our output should be. But if we want to figure out how much profit it is, we're going to look at the average cost to produce that number of units. So if the price, market clearing price that's coming from the market, is greater than the average cost to the firm to produce that, there's a profit there. We could also say there's producer surplus that could go between profit and servicing fixed costs. Right now we can just simply say that it's profit for the firm. So let's see here. I'm missing one sheet. So we have, as I say, this is the one we're going to redraw a whole bunch of times, a marginal cost curve. And we have an average cost curve. So the firm is a price-taking firm. The market decides what the price is, and they're just selling into a market. Say it's here. Price is dollars per unit. And the market decides that the price is here. The firm's selling to here. This is where the firm decides price equals marginal cost. This is where the firm says this is the optimal amount for me to sell. This is the profit maximizing point for me to produce at. Importantly, then the firm can go down at this level and look at their average costs. They're going to set how much to produce at where it is at marginal cost, but they're going to have to make a payment out for their factors of production at average cost. Total revenue minus total costs. And then in our formula that we have here, we have the price minus the average cost at Q is this distance. And if we multiply the whole thing by the amount that we produced, we'll get profit, being that box there. I'll do that a couple more times. Right now, there's a deviation when we talked about all of this graph that we're doing is in the short run. Capital is fixed. How big our factory is fixed. How many acres we're going to plant to corn are fixed. In the short run, fixed costs are fixed. In the long run, fixed costs can be changed. So we say in the short run, we have the size of the restaurant that we're going to work in, the kitchen that we're going to work in. We have capital. We think about machinery. We think about physical constraints. This is how much area we have to farm, to mine, whatever it is. This is the forest that we have for forestry. In the long run, we can change the fixed cost. In the long run, we can buy more machinery. In the long run, we can innovate, which is actually changing a cost curve. Right? We can get more efficient of inputs per outputs. We could expand production more than just adding workers to the shift. So importantly, we would have average cost curves that were here. And then if our factory were to expand and we were to add more capital, it might move out to the right. We're going to be able to produce more. So as we invest more and produce more, we would say these are short-run average cost curves. And there's going to be a long-run average cost curve. That's going to be an envelope that's going to encompass the bottom of all of these short-run average cost curves. So imagine we take the bottom of each one. That's sort of like the minimum average cost. And this one would be the long-run average cost. Right? We have a woolen spinning mill. This is the Industrial Revolution. We have our woolen mill in England. We could have one set of loom-making machinery. We could double it and have two sets. And we could have three sets. Our factory would get bigger. We would be expanding by adding capital. So our long-run average cost curve is the minimum of the short-run average cost curves into an envelope of those. So this is also, we can think about scale of production. Right? As the scale gets bigger, do we have economies of scale? We're increasing the scale of our production. So if we just do long-run average cost curves, we could think of them having three basic trends. This is, as we get bigger and bigger, our long-run average costs are staying the same. This is, as we get bigger, our long-run average costs are going up. And this is, as we get bigger and bigger, our long-run average costs get less and less. And this is where we talk about economies of scale. Okay? So on this flat one, we would say that there's constant returns to scale. On the one that's going up, we would say there's decreasing returns to scale. As you get bigger and bigger, it's not actually more efficient. It gets clunky. I would think maybe about like restaurants. Like the bigger and bigger restaurant, it's just not worth it. You just need to start another restaurant at some point. An optimal size. The restaurant has some sort of optimal size that you can serve people. Some restaurants get bigger and bigger, but usually you just start another restaurant. Add another Starbucks. Like if you don't want to go to the biggest Starbucks in the world, they just keep adding Starbucks to every corner until people are satiated. This one going down though, very important, increasing returns to scale. You guys got any examples of increasing returns to scale? Like an industry where the bigger you get, the lower your costs are. What's that? Costco, like big box retailing. Okay. How about producing something? Retailing is kind of tricky because they're providing different things. You know, a mom and pop store on the corner is providing different things than Costco. Somebody who's producing something, increasing returns to scale. So big farming, right? Like big capital intensive, subsidy intensive, huge farms. They have some giant investments in tractors and infrastructure, and the bigger they get, they're driving things down. We could also, importantly in this class, there are ones that are going to come up. So we have electricity, the electricity grid and power production. So a power plant costs billions of dollars, right? We're not each with little Honda generators in our house. We want to have this billion-dollar huge power plant somewhere far away because they're going to produce at much less cost than if we try to produce our own electricity. Over time, now we have the ability of houses to produce their own electricity through solar, but we have big infrastructure that has increasing returns to scale because they can average the cost over a lot of people. Constant returns to scale